Over the summer, I asked some wise souls here in our sanctuary what they needed to hear about on the Jewish high holidays, what sacred story they thought I should tell you today. Needless to say, if I asked 10 Jews, they had 15 opinions. But one thing I heard a lot was, we need to hear a sermon about something we can all agree on. And I thought, that's a great idea. Each time I received that advice in recent weeks, I asked the person who made the suggestion, do you have any advice for me about what it is that we can all agree on? And a number of people said, anti-Semitism. And each time someone suggested that as a unifying topic for this morning's proceedings, I wondered, are we unified about anti-Semitism? Its definition, its causes, and its solutions? And I've also been wondering in these days, ought unanimity on this or any other topic be our highest Jewish goal? So let's explore these questions together this morning and see what we can learn about what in fact unifies us as a people, what divides us, and where we go from here. In order to do that, we need to go back. Way back. We're going to go back to a text that you think you know well, a text that brings us together each year on the evening of the 14th day of the Hebrew month of Nisan when we gather for our Passover Seders. Every year on Passover, when the youngest child asks, and if you're the youngest, you can join me, Ma nishtana halayla hazeh mikol haleilot. At a deep level, what they're really asking is, what is the story of the Jewish people? And the beginning of the answer is the Haggadah's answer, right after the youngest child's shining moment. The answer that we have been giving to our children for 3,000 years is, Arami Oved Avi. My father was a wandering Aramean. Now, to my 6-year-old self, who had just recited the 404 questions for the first time, this felt like kind of an anticlimactic answer. But that's the answer the Haggadah provides. So imagine the surprise of my 26-year-old self in rabbinical school studying the interpretations of the medieval commentator Rashi on this text. Now, Rashi translates these words a little differently. He translates Arami Oved Avi as, an Aramean tried to kill my father. An Aramean tried to kill my father. So which translation is right, and I wondered, and which one is wrong? Is it my father was a wandering Aramean, or an Aramean tried to kill my father? And you might be wondering by now, why am I bothering you on Yom Kippur from a story about Passover? Here's why. Because Arami Oved Avi is, in fact, the beginning of our sacred Jewish story. The story of our journey from slavery to Exodus to Mount Sinai to the Promised Land is our most sacred narrative as a people. And how we understand these words and how we handle the different ways we might interpret them can either serve as our superpower as a people or our kryptonite. The familiar translation, my father was a wandering Aramean, teaches us that because we have so often been wanderers, and because we have so often been strangers, we must tear down the walls of injustice for all, because no one is free if we are not all free, and that it never works out better for Jews when we're alone. And our Jewish history has taught us to take this admonition very seriously. But what if Rashi's translation is the one we should actually be pasting into all of our Haggadot? An Aramean tried to kill my father. Rashi's interpretation feels pretty faithful to our experience as Jews over the last thousands of years. We've been persecuted and targeted and tricked, chased out of our homes and homelands again and again and again. And because of that, we must build walls around ourselves. We must take care of ourselves to make sure that we are not tricked or targeted or destroyed. Rashi's translation says, trust no one, protect yourselves. And our Jewish history has taught us to take Rashi's admonition very seriously. So which is it? And why does it matter? It matters because my honest assessment in listening to our members during the 150 or so coffees I've had with you this year is that we as a Jewish people are on the verge of tearing ourselves apart over which of these interpretations is correct. My fear at this time in Jewish history is not only about what others might do to us, it also is about what we as Jews are already doing to one another. Our Jewish house is splintering in ways our enemies could never accomplish alone. What is happening inside the Jewish people seems to reflect the fractures of this country, where rhetoric radicalizes and turns neighbor against neighbor and family members against family members. And now we within the Jewish community are reflecting back the same suspicion and outrage and division that threatens America itself. So many times this year, over cappuccinos and cold brews and a bourbon or three, as I've listened to some members speak with such disdain and utter derision for the views of other members they disagree with, I have truly felt bereft for the future of the Jewish people. My friends, I say to you today that there is no inherent contradiction, no inconsistency about us protecting, valuing, cherishing, and uplifting Jewish lives on the one hand, and protecting, valuing, cherishing, and uplifting the lives of others as well. Both of these translations are true, Hebraically, spiritually, experientially, and psychosocially. Judaism has always required both of these commitments of us as a people in a moment of crisis, and to be clear, we are in a moment of crisis. If we as a people decide that difference is intolerable, if we decide to walk away from the table around our profound differences of opinion on Israel, on anti-Semitism, or the direction of our democracy, away from debate, away from community, we will be the generation that unwinds the covenantal bonds that have held us for thousands of years as one people with many faces. We can disagree. Disagreement is a feature of Jewish life and learning, not a bug. There are approximately 5,000 arguments in the Talmud, our foundational 5th century code of Jewish law, and only something like 50 of them are actually resolved in the text itself. But if I could have one wish fulfilled on this day, it would be for us to each vow not to take one more step into what already is beginning to feel like a Jewish civil war over what our real sacred story is, as if our story were a binary of computer code with only ones and zeros. My friends, I ask you on this holiest day with two different versions of our sacred story as a people, can we be unified? This is upon us to navigate, to grapple with, and I think it behooves us to know that there are people in our synagogue, people among all Jewish communities here in Israel and wherever Jews dwell, who see themselves in each of these sacred stories. We as a people have begun to settle into the kind of compulsive knowingness that Rabbi Reuben spoke about so powerfully last night. But the argument that somehow Arami Oved Avi can mean only one thing or the other, we are either for making the world a safer place for all, or we are for making the world safer for Jews, is neither faithful to Judaism, nor will it be effective in combating the challenges we face as a people. We need to take both of these interpretations literally and seriously, because the alternative is an uncivil war that I fear is already beginning among the Jewish people. So let's take them seriously, one at a time. Arami Oved Avi, an Aramean tried to kill my father. Sometimes we use this as a kind of a joke for Jewish holidays like Purim. What's the joke? What's the big message of Purim? They tried to kill us, we won, let's eat. Except that joke doesn't feel so funny anymore. You've shared with me your fears of anti-Semitism that feel scarily familiar to the fears we have as a people have felt for nearly all of our history. Arami Oved Avi. In much of our lived experience over thousands of years, we have been pursued and blamed and scapegoated, forcibly converted, expelled, and killed for being Jewish. Many of you have shared, and I have resonated with, a fear of anti-Semitism rising in our city and in our country, a sense that the Jewish people are alone and isolated, and a sense of hopelessness that we can turn back the rise of anti-Semitism. Jews under threat for wearing a kippah, for wearing a Star of David or a hostage tag. Jews killed while worshiping at a synagogue in Manchester, England, as they were this morning on Yom Kippur. Our hearts are broken as that news unfolds. We see the ancient echoes from the political left, anti-Semitism being used right now to exclude or physically or verbally attack Jews in academic and professional spaces and to harass them on campus. Jews who support the existence of a Jewish and democratic state of Israel are being kicked out of progressive spaces on causes we've been passionate activists for decades. And Jews are being blamed for decisions made by the Israeli government 6,000 miles away. And from the political right, anti-Semitism being used as a smokescreen by those who target people of color and trans women and trans people and women and immigrants, used by those who simultaneously blame Jews as the orchestrators of these so-called problems. Anti-Semitism is being used right now by those seeking authoritarian power to increase racialized fear and division, deflecting blame for the failures or unpopularity of policies by offering Jews as the scapegoat. Anti-Semitism is being used right now as a camouflage to damage fundamental freedoms, as a sledgehammer against free speech in the name of fighting anti-Semitism. Time and again, from the right and the left, we Jews have been threatened, subjugated, and worse for who we are. As the grandson of Holocaust refugees, I know in my bones that we need to look out for our own. We cannot take Jewish safety for granted, not in our city and not in our country. And then there's the other interpretation of Arami Oved Avi that we must come back to. My father was a wandering Aramean. Our ancestors were strangers, and so to make the world more whole for all of God's creatures, 36 times in the Torah, far more than any other mitzvah, we are commanded to take care of the other in society. I think of the motto of the amazing Jewish organization HIAS, what our forebears knew as the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society. HIAS's motto today is, we used to help refugees because they were Jewish. Now we help them because we are Jewish. I've heard from some members who've asked me why we are so engaged as a congregation in social justice work. Is that a reform movement thing, they ask? Implying that, if so, maybe they don't really belong in a reform synagogue. My response is, no, justice work is not a reform Jewish thing. It is a Jewish thing. Arami Oved Avi. Because we know what it's like to suffer, to be oppressed, to be the minority, Jewish tradition implores us to take care of those who suffer, who are oppressed, who are the minority. It is because of the struggles of our ancestors that we are obligated to help others who are struggling. The bottom line is both translations of Arami Oved Avi placed before us, both are true, historically, legalistically, and linguistically. My friends, if we are to dismantle anti-Semitism, if we are to write the next great chapter of the Jewish people, we will never do it by tearing each other down, by cutting each other off, retreating to ideological bubbles or ideologically homogenous Jewish communities. If we are to show the world how we want to be treated, let us vow on this day of vows to stay in relationship with each other when the conversations are hard, especially when they are. After all, this is what Jews have always done. Our most sacred texts, on the one hand, teach us to love our neighbors as ourselves, and on the other hand, remind us that Kol Yisrael Arevim Zelazeh, all Jews are responsible for one another. The great first-century Rabbi Hillel taught one of the most quoted of Jewish maxims, if I'm not for myself, who will be for me? And if I'm only for myself, what am I? And we're about to hear the Haftarah for Yom Kippur we hear every year, in which God asks the non-rhetorical question, is this the fast I look for, lying in sackcloth and ashes? No, Isaiah says, this is the fast I desire, to unlock the fetters of wickedness and untie the cords of the yoke, to let the oppressed go free, when you see the naked to clothe them, and not to ignore your own kin. We see from our synagogue's history that this tension, a tension that I'd argue is healthy, has been a part of our congregation since its inception. In 1863, when Rabbi Samuel Meyer Isaacs was the senior rabbi of a then 18-year-old synagogue called Shari Tefillah on the Lower East Side, there were heated debates within the synagogue about two things that year, according to my research recently at the New York Jewish Historical Society. One debate was, how much Hebrew should there be in Shabbat services? Now, this was, if you can believe it, a fiery argument between two entrenched camps, one made up of Jews from the old country and one made up of Jews who'd been born in America. Bob Zorowitz, I can't imagine how close those worship committee meetings must have come to fisticuffs. And the other debate was about the Yom Kippur sermon Rabbi Isaacs gave that year, where he made the case that freed black men, former slaves who were now serving in the Union Army, should be paid the same wages as white soldiers. This, too, was an intensely debated subject in our congregation. We did not all agree. I can't imagine the coffees Rabbi Isaacs had with members of the synagogue at the best coffee shops on Worcester Street, where Shari Tefillah was located at the time. But the synagogue thrived through those debates about what the right balance was between the particular and the universal, between internal synagogue issues and the issues of the day. They didn't choose one side or the other. Do we advocate only for ourselves, or do we advocate for others? Do we only discuss ritual matters from the bima and in the bulletin, or do we also engage in the political hot topics of our time? Their answer was, we have to embrace both the particular and the universal, because both elements are essential for Jewish survival, and both are essential for Jews to fulfill our mission in the world. So what should the ratio be between these two interpretations? How much should we focus on one interpretation of Arami Oved Avi or the other? That discussion has waxed and waned, I'm sure, through the 180-year history of Shari Tefillah. It certainly waxed and waned in the 3,000-year history of the Jewish people. And that's great news. It means that we can be responsive to the needs of the moment. I'm guessing that those ratios looked a little different for Shari Tefillah in 1939 than they did in 1863. I imagine they looked different in 1963 than they did in 1939. They looked different on October 2nd, 2025 than they did on October 2nd, 2023, and they should. We already see this balance of the particular and the universal playing out on a regular basis at Shari Tefillah here in 2025. At the same time as we study Torah on Zoom every Wednesday at 12:30, you're welcome to join us. At that very same hour, we are feeding our hungry neighbors on the Upper East Side, right here at your synagogue. At the same time as the incredible Shari Justice team was beginning to plan for Climate Justice Shabbat on October 10th, please come, they created and ran an incredible program on anti-Semitism with 300 people in attendance here, right in our sanctuary 2 weeks ago, sponsored by many Jewish organizations in the city. And as we, your leaders, your staff, have been and remain focused on creating the most meaningful and moving high holiday services and adult education classes and nursery school and religious school and teen programming and social events, our community organizing team is focused on a forum with the mayoral candidates to be held in Queens on October 19th. A forum at which we will be publicly asking the candidates critical questions about Jewish safety in the city. I hope you can join us. The ratio of how much we focus on ourselves versus how much we focus on the larger world is not set unilaterally by me or by President Michelle Silverstein or any one person in the synagogue. And that's good news too, because it means that if you personally are driven most of all by the particularistic fate of the Jewish people, and you think the synagogue is not doing enough about that, you can bring your ideas and your 10 friends who want to work on that with you, and we will help you bring your ideas into fruition. And if you are driven most of all by a more universal concern in the larger world, and you think the synagogue isn't focused enough on that, you can bring your ideas and your 10 friends who want to work on that with you, and we will help you bring your ideas into fruition. And here's what I would guess would happen if you brought your passion and your friends to the table. If you show up for the concerns of other members, even if their concerns aren't your top priority, I'd bet those members will show up for your concerns, even if your concerns are not their top priority. Because I have both a hope and a hunch that we care about each other at least as much as we care about our own totally valid self-interests. I told you at the beginning of this sermon about the wise and politically diverse people I spoke to, many of whom advised me to find a sermon topic for today that we can all agree on. At some point along the way, I decided not to do that. At first, I thought I was making that decision kind of the same way that you laughed, because I thought that perhaps it might be a fool's errand, that it might just be impossible to do so in such a great community consisting of people with lots of sacred stories and a huge diversity of perspectives. I'd like to think, for example, that we'd all agree that we want Jewish people to be safe, whether they're here in Israel or anywhere in the world, but the fact is that we do not agree on the question of at what cost that Jewish safety should come. It's okay, I know it's sad. Take your time, my dear. She's going to be sad to miss the sermon. In the end, I decided not to try to seek unanimity of opinion because what I've come to realize, and maybe this ironically is something we can all agree on, is that unanimity is not and should not be our primary goal. We have not endured as a people for thousands of years because we've always agreed. We have endured because we refused to let go of one another, even when we drive each other batty sometimes. As my friend Rabbi Asher Knight has said, we Jews are going to need one another, not only to endure the end of the war in Israel and Gaza, which, please God, may it come soon, but also in the reckoning and the rebuilding that will follow, which may test us even more. We will need one another to resist the poisons that already divide America and to make sure those fractures do not hollow out our Jewish home. Do we have to choose between looking out for ourselves or looking out for others? Do we have to choose between remembering our history of being victims of injustice or our history of helping others who are victims of injustice? Not only do we not have to choose, my friends, I would say that we must not choose. Both are in the DNA of what it means to be a Jew. Both are in the DNA of this 3,000-year-old prophetic Judaism that we are inheritors of. Arami oved avi. We have a history of being oppressed, and we must fight that oppression. If that's your strongest impulse at this moment, I'm so very glad that you're a member here. Glad that you're joining your fellow members, your lay leaders, and your clergy and staff in fighting that fight, because it feels like the fight of our Jewish lives. Arami oved avi. We have a history of being the other, and we must fight alongside all those who are the other in society today so that we will not be alone. If that's your strongest impulse at this moment, I'm so very glad that you're a member here. Glad that you're joining your fellow members, your lay leaders, your clergy and staff in fighting that fight, because that also feels like the fight of our Jewish lives. My friends, we are stronger as a congregation and as a people when we respect one another, when we talk it out, when we acknowledge that our sacred story can encompass more than one thing. And when we are stronger, we can both withstand the threat of anti-Semitism and be a force for good as Jews are called to be in the world. And we are weaker when we cut off one half of our sacred story. And when we are weaker, we won't be able to make the world safer for ourselves or for others. This truly is our sacred collective story. May we cherish it, and as importantly, may we cherish one another. May those who come after us have the privilege of inheriting a planet for the Jewish people and for all humanity that is safer and more righteous because we were here. That truly is our task. L'shana tova tekatevu v'tekatemu. May we write and seal our sacred stories, all of them, for blessing in the book of life. Shana Tova.
O Yisrael, Arevim Zebazeh, we are part of this holy community. O Yisrael, Arevim Zebazeh, we are better together as one. Yai lai 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 lai, yai lai lai lai. Yai lai 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 lai, yai lai 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 lai. Yai, lai, lai, lai. We are better together as one. O Yisrael, Arevim Zebazeh, we are reaching beyond our own circle. O Yisrael, Arevim Zebazeh, we are healing the cracks in our world. Yai lai 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 lai, yai lai lai lai, yai lai 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 lai, yai lai 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 lai, yai lai lai lai. We are healing the cracks in our world. Midor vador. We are links in the chain of tradition. Midor vador. We are the ones carrying forward the vision. O Yisrael, Arevim Zebazeh, we are traveling the same path together. O Yisrael, Arevim Zebazeh, we are walking each other back home. We are healing the cracks in our world. We are better together as one.